Space Jam is a very dated movie. I don't think that's a controversial take. It's a 1996 live-action animation hybrid about the Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan playing basketball together against aliens that only got off the ground because of some successful Nike commercials. It's the kind of concept where for it to not only be greenlit, but fully produced and shown in theaters off that concept alone, you know it had to have been the 90s. The 70s and 80s were too safe and conservative with their animations, and the 2000s wouldn't allow something so wacky and, to put it gently, marketably dumb. The movie is a product of its time, made to sell products, and you could tell that the executives at Warner Brothers played a large part in it turning out as it did. But there is a certain charm that just captures the pure essence of the 90s when you watch it, so while it's not a good movie, I think it's at the least fun and to the point. And just so you know, that's from a guy that only just watched the whole movie for the first time in preparation for this. Inevitably though, as a movie that tugs at many people's nostalgic heartstrings, it would only be a matter of time before a sequel was released that would serve a similar purpose to the original by pretty much being nothing more than a big advertisement. Not that a Space Jam sequel had to do that necessarily, and I'd say if it's going to be made in the first place, you might as well try something new, but unfortunately, that isn't something I can give to the recently released film, Space Jam: A New Legacy. Directed by Malcolm D. Lee, acclaimed vision behind such films as Scary Movie 5, and written by 3 fourth graders in 2001, Space Jam: New Leaf is a movie I was kinda dreading from its first reveal trailer. The reason behind that being that I knew exactly what it was going to be like, a nostalgia-infused cash grab shoving in as many properties as possible without any thought for the pure purpose of letting people gawk and holler at pop culture jokes while CG versions of the Looney Tunes play basketball with this time LeBron James. Its main reason for being created seemed obviously just because the studio wanted to milk nostalgic millennials into watching an even cash grabbier version of an advertisement in movie form. And were my suspicions proved right when I opened up HBO Max and decided to watch it for free because I didn't want to pay $15 to see it? Yeah, pretty much. But to get into that further, first I gotta tell you about the plot. Like I said already, the original Space Jam was no Inception. It came from a very simple premise to begin with, and therefore didn't try to act like it was something else. The movie is high energy and ends after about 80 minutes because it doesn't want to waste your time, and it knows exactly how long it should be. This movie wants to act like it has good characters and arcs people want to follow though, so now we've got 2 full hours to sit through, and no, I do not think it was needed. I mean, I say it like Space Jam 2 wants to be its own intellectual property unique to the original, but it's a bit hard for me to think that way with the amount of reused aspects from it put in here. You got the Wayne Knight character that's pretty much useless and follows LeBron around to act like comic relief, though he never made me laugh. You got the last second win by a single point, NBA player skills used for monsters, the down and out halftime scene where LeBron has to tell all the Looney Tunes characters they can do it, and of course, the moment where the Tunes realize they should act loony. With that many obvious similarities to the first movie, how exactly do you want me to take it? I guess it's supposed to be an homage to the original or something? But with how self-referential the movie is about being a Space Jam sequel, the fact that they pretty much never bring these specific aspects up and play it pretty straight makes me think it's just poor writing masked under the guise of parodying itself. Not that I would expect anything less from this movie, because if I'm being honest, it reads more like a fan fiction than an actual attempt at a true successor to the movie. You wanna guess what the awesome storyline the movie apparently needed 2 hours to develop is about? LeBron's kid not wanting to play basketball, instead wanting to be a game designer, and LeBron not being fully supportive of him because he was told not to play games as a kid, so he became a strict dad. Yeah, this is quite literally the story of, "But Dad, I don't want to join the family business. I want to be a rock star." Or as I like to call it, the hop formula, since that's one of the easiest examples I can point to for what I mean. As far as concepts for films, this is about as bottom of the barrel as you could possibly get, and while I think that any movie, no matter how generic the premise, can make something good with the right execution, do you really think that Space Jam: The Next Generation is going to be that movie? Aside from everything relating to the pop culture references and Looney Tunes characters themselves, LeBron's arc with his son goes through all the notes you'd expect. LeBron doesn't understand his son, so Don Cheadle uses that to get to him and uses code for the basketball game they have to play later. Then LeBron gets the game, and he and his son have that moment where they hug and make up in front of a big crowd. You get the drift. It's not entertaining and highly predictable. I just want to watch fucking Looney Tunes characters play goddamn basketball. I don't need this bullshit that I don't care about. Kinda like all the dumb references to other Warner Bros. Material Bugs and LeBron find while looking for the other tunes. If you've ever seen a reference to Mad Max, Casablanca, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and I don't know if you ever heard of this one, The Matrix, you've seen what they do in Space Jam Resurrection. You could probably even guess the exact shots used for the Matrix one because they are indeed those shots, the exact ones people were getting hold of back in the early 2000s. The only kinda clever reference I could give the film credit for was Austin Powers, but for everything else, you could tell they didn't care about making the references unique in pretty much any way. It all just reminds me of that one scene in Ready Player One where they go inside The Shining, but at least with that sequence there was some interesting imagery I hadn't seen before. This is giving me pretty much nothing to work with. In general, the overabundance of references was kinda unbearable, just taking what the first film did with Looney Tunes references and expanding it to more nostalgic properties, the only difference being when the original Space Jam did it, seeing all those obscure Looney Tunes characters on the sidelines was kinda novel and didn't have a major focus. But with this, it's just Ready Player One, Basketball Edition. None of the other properties shown in this film have anything to do with the Looney Tunes anyway. They're just Warner Bros. Properties. In that same way, the film doesn't even really feel like a Looney Tunes movie, just a Warner Bros. And LeBron James movie that happened to have the Looney Tunes. One thing it could give the original film credit for was that it was a Looney Tunes film, focusing on them possibly becoming slaves and actively seeking out Michael Jordan for help, but this just has them in it for no other reason than LeBron coming across them first. Other than that, they're completely disconnected. It's almost amusing how the film is both similar to the original in ways that make it look lazily written, but not similar in ways that make it feel like an almost unrelated movie, though that won't stop the writers from acting like they know what they're doing. I said it briefly earlier, but the film does not shut up about how it is a sequel, constantly throwing in lines acting like they're conscious of the fact they're a successor to Space Jam and making fun of it. There are so many lines like, "Oh, having an NBA player as the lead in a movie never works out well, and I've already played basketball with an NBA superstar before." Even the Don Cheadle villain is called Al G. Rhythm and makes up the scenarios for LeBron to do this event. Like, the movie thinks it's slick. But when you have moments like this, and this,
Can't a lady check her Twitter?
and fucking this,
Notorious P.I.G.
it's easy to see you aren't exactly 22 Jump Street. I don't know when exactly they lost the right to act like they're a self-referential subversion of the original film. Maybe it was when LeBron dabbed, maybe it was when Porky Pig rapped, maybe it was when the movie got fucking greenlit, who can truly say? Maybe it was when they decided to put in that little robot, you know, the marketable non-verbal thing that captures everyone's hearts and wallets after the film is over, that even the original movie didn't have. Point is, movie. Just saying you aren't like something does not mean you aren't like it. In fact, with the amount of mixed signals the product gives off between thinking it's an homage, a parody, a subversion, or whatnot, it feels like the film is trying to make us confused about how we should feel about it. And when it's this movie, I think it's just denial. Denial that they're just a cheap imitation of an already cheap idea while also being completely different and much more shitty. Speaking of which, how about we discuss the visuals? On the side of the original, it's both aged pretty well and really horrifically. The 2D animation mixed with live action actually doesn't look bad. Everything is fluid, the characters feel like they're in the world, and there's some impressive perspective shots and usage of techniques that hadn't been seen before, including incorporating 3D rendered tracking shots with 2D characters. On that front, it's actually a revolutionary movie for its time. The CG, on the other hand, is so horrendously dated and bad that it loops back around to being kinda charming in how terrible it looks. Needless to say, it's a mixed bag. Space Jam H2O is even worse though, because neither the 2D or 3D animation looks really all that good. The 2D looks kinda janky and weirdly less dynamic between poses as it moves, making it feel rushed or like it's missing a few frames. The CG doesn't fare too much better. I mean, yeah, it's modern CG, there's a lot of good looking stuff in there, but most of the characters with fur especially look kinda like those flocked Funko Pops rather than actually having natural hair. Something about them just looks weirdly cheap on occasion, and it appears even more apparent with some of the background characters since they just use models from previous films on occasion. The Iron Giant model they use is straight out of Ready Player One, with an unfinished leg unique to that film, along with the Captain Caveman design from Scoob and that Smallfoot movie they did that no one really remembers. Any minor pop culture reference that doesn't look shitty most likely had its assets taken from another already produced property, and it's pretty easy to tell if you look for them. Not that the shittiness is exclusive to characters you're not supposed to pay attention to. I mean, look at Lola. She's fucking terrifying in 3D. It does not work at all. Anyway, segueing into the characters. As far as comparisons, there isn't much I can say. The original isn't exactly the best when it comes to representing the Looney Tunes. The voices are almost exclusively by newcomers in the wake of Mel Blanc's death, and it kinda matches how the characters themselves can be a little bit off and don't always seem fully in character. Chuck Jones in particular, the creator of a lot of Looney Tunes characters, hated the movie and thought it did complete disservice to the characters, especially Porky and Bugs, believing Bugs would have been able to beat the aliens on his own in an 11-minute time frame. And yeah, I think I can confidently say with this, he's basically rolling in his grave right now. It's not even really just the old characters that are given a worse treatment. Arguably, the worst offenders are the newer characters, and that includes Lola, because she is not the same as she was before. There was a whole controversy around making Lola less sexy. I didn't really give a shit either way, and most people justified it by saying they were taking it away to make her more of a girl boss character, or just focus more on her personality. But honestly, she was just way more forgettable in this movie. She has, like, no character or defining moments beyond, I guess, her opening scene, and even then, it's not really all that memorable. Zendaya also voices her, and it doesn't really fit when put up against the other VAs that have now done the characters for decades. More than all that, though, whenever I look at Lola from a character perspective in this movie, all I see is disappointment. The Looney Tunes show basically already had a perfect version of the character. A zany, unaware, almost psychotic weirdo that loves to talk and show affection in the weirdest ways possible. The blueprints were right there and got chucked out the window for no apparent reason. But what's even worse than all of that is the Don Cheadle villain. He is just so goddamn stupid for no reason. His entire course of action after getting LeBron to come to his world doesn't make sense. As the ruler of the domain everyone's in, why would he leave a way for his team to lose? They show in the film he's not above cheating in public, so why would he make it so there was any chance for the protagonists at all? How does that benefit him? No matter how the movie tries to justify it, the fact he could have easily done that and had millions of people along with LeBron to rule over regardless of what happened shows how fucking dumb he is as an antagonist, and that the script was probably written in a first draft. And I think that's all I've got to say. Space Jam: New Nightmare is a mess. A massive, corporate, oversaturated, underdeveloped, confused, dated film that doesn't seem to know if it wants to be earnest in its corporatism, or act like it's a self-referential parody and knows what it is. Really, I think of it as just the bare minimum of a large budget movie, and while I could find some entertainment in how terrible it was, I don't think I'm gonna remember it nearly as much as the original, which at least didn't try to hide its obvious corporate reason for being made under unfunny fourth wall breaks about how shitty their movie is, instead just sort of embracing it and having a fun time. Watch it if you want, I guess, but really, I don't see much of a reason to when it'll just be pushed under by the next pop culture universe movie that does almost the exact same concept but with, I don't know, virtual chess or some shit. I've been Just Stop. See you later.